pianist Maiko Mori and violinist Eulalie Shalom, both professional musicians preparing to give a recital with a difference. They're to be wired up to sweat bands and electrodes, and while they play, their stress levels will be automatically measured and displayed for their audience to follow in real time. The Virtuoso Stress evening sought to look at how the little-known science of bioengineering can help performers deal with performance nerves. Sandra Scheffelbein, a bioengineer from Imperial College London, was overseeing the experiment.
I think one exciting thing is a chance to see inside the musician. So in a normal concert setting, you're just watching the musician. You can see the musician moving, but you don't see what's happening inside the musician. So this is a chance for the audience to actually partake of the nervous energy that the musician has.
So what can engineering offer a jittery musician that a spot of therapy, or even a stiff G&T before showtime, can't? Aaron Williaman is a performance scientist at the Royal College of Music.
We need social skills, cognitive skills, perceptual skills, motor skills. We need to be able to put these together in very complex ways in order to walk out on stage and to convince our audience that we know what we're talking about musically. And so what the engineering can provide are a range of different ways to measure some of those qualities, to measure how they're behaving when things are going right and what's happening when things are going wrong.
Which isn't to say a spot of adrenaline does a recital any harm. According to Aaron, it's just a matter of what you do with it.
Usually this happens for the best musicians. We see that this happens before they perform. And so the peak of anxiety happens right before they go on stage, and then they're free, actually, once they get there, to perform at ease. And we see this with a lot of very good musicians, even some performers like Vladimir Horowitz, for instance, had to be pushed on stage.
And with a number of added distractions, Eulalie and Maiko weren't about to show up without some serious rehearsal under their belts. The pair have played alone and together for years now, and they had more than a hunch which bits of the performance were likely to set their hearts racing.
Probably a lower heart rate when we're playing together, because we've been playing together for many years now, and it doesn't matter what the stress levels are. As soon as we start playing, we sort of click into this really pleasurable moment. And probably slightly higher heart rate when we're playing separately on our own. Partly because it's technically, the pieces will be technically more demanding, and partly also simply not having something to focus on, as in the other person's music.
Indeed, when the two of them got stuck into the opening piece of Mozart, the telepathy kicked in, and they both remained at relative ease. Maiko's heart rate in particular was bobbing around the low hundreds for the duration. That's lower than when she was talking to the audience beforehand. And a sharp contrast to her solo Prokofiev recital that followed. A more taxing piece on every level. And with no Eulalie to meld with, you could see the places where Maiko was being taxed the hardest. Meanwhile, Eulalie's solo Paganini lifted her heart rate into the sort of overdrive you'd expect from a Formula One driver. Not that you'd have noticed from her ice-cool demeanour throughout. Gruelling solo performances out of the way, Eulalie and Maiko were given a debrief by bioengineering student Evan Morgan. The evening was based on his final year research into performance anxiety. It's clearly a labour of love for Evan. In particular, he hopes that a better understanding of musicianly anxieties will save others from the fate that he endured.
I played violin, not to a high level, up to grade 1. I remember a specific performance, performing in a church and just shaking so much that I couldn't hit the right strings. So I think this sort of research could be helpful for younger musicians, or any musicians who are learning music and who are perhaps put off continuing with their music studies because of the symptoms of anxiety that they experience.
Though of course performance nerves aren't the sole preserve of the musician. Certainly on the night there were plenty of other people keen to glean some insights from the findings of bioengineering.
I come from a theatre background and I'm really interested in the science and arts crossover, so it's really interesting to kind of hear the musicians' take on what it feels like.
My name is Alan Watson. I'm from the University of Cardiff, where I'm a lecturer in neuroscience and anatomy, and I have an interest in the biology of musical performance and performers' injuries and the physical conditions which relate to playing. And I think this is very interesting work, and it's something where you can really get useful objective information that will help musicians to cope with these physical problems.
Well, I'm actually a health promoter for musicians. I work for a charity called BAPAM, which is the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine, and this area is very sort of pertinent to the work that we do, and performance anxiety is a huge issue.
Well, I'm a composition student at the RCM, so I am a musician, sort of. I just don't do as much performance as this. And I thought it was really interesting. It was really well put together, really enlightening, and I think it was reassuring for me to see that musicians, even of this very high standard, are still human and they still get nervous, and you know, it was definitely comforting in a way.